This episode is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle and Brex, the AI-powered spend platform.
Hello, this is John McCauley, CFO of Calendly. You are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 1012.
So you really have to stay on top of, your day-to-day transactions, making sure that when the customer's paying, if they're taking a deduction, what was it for, chasing it down, and take action quicker, and also display trends to the business. So if you're quoting new business, for example, for a Lowe's, you look back and say, hey, yeah, our margin was good on that product, but look at all the deductions that they took over time for late shipments or paperwork that was sideways. You got to include that in your cost structure when you're quoting new work. So.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with John Lutz, CFO of Sellars. Looking back, John Lutz doesn't hesitate to recall where his career journey experienced a transformative turn. It was during his tenure as a director of finance at Charter Steel, where he transitioned a cumbersome, error-prone Excel model into an advanced activity-based costing system. It wasn't easy, but it was a success. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. $37,025.1. These are the three numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, you should get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system and with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/KPI. That's netsuite.com/KPI. Hello, we're speaking with John Lutz, CFO of Sellars. John, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
So, John, as always, we're going to ask you to look back, and we're interested in learning what those experiences were that you feel prepared you for a CFO role. What would those be for you?
It's interesting to look back. You think about what really prepares you to be at the CFO level. A lot of these stories that I was thinking about for the show were relative to leadership, not as much maybe finance, but just a few projects that I worked on in the course of time. I was a director of finance at Veolia Environmental Services down in Houston, Texas, part of a big global company. They service the petrochemical industry down there. Corporate office was working on rolling out a shared services center as part of a PeopleSoft implementation. The business I was in was kind of a disparate group of offices, guys that were really used to being pretty independent, sending crews out to petrochemical plants to do industrial type cleaning work. These guys were used to asking for an envelope of cash so they could go pay for hotel rooms, and it was kind of the Wild West. So trying to implement a shared services program and spending cards, that was a little cultural shift for these folks. And it was a struggle. A lot of the towns that these guys operated in may have had a gas station that also was the liquor store and the sporting goods store, and the MCC codes on the cards would prohibit them from buying gasoline. So I'd get calls at all these odd hours of the night saying, hey, I can't fill up my truck, or I can't pay for the hotel. So it was, the challenge for me was taking their requirements back to the corporate office to say, hey, appreciate the internal controls that you've set up, but I've got people out in the field trying to do work, and trying to get both sides to see the other side's requirements. We ended up getting through it. It was a little bit of a painful process, but I will say in the end, the team on my side, the guys out in the field, they understood the need for it, and it was a change for them. I think they appreciated having a go-between, and our corporate folks understood, okay, we set up all these guardrails to begin with. Hey, maybe those weren't correct for the business. And so they were certainly more free to reach out to me as things were changing to say, hey, we're going to do this. How do you think this will impact your business? So, it was one of those situations where okay, you've got financial requirements on one end, but you've got to get business done on the other. It was a nice learning moment for me.
I see from your bio, you a few times were sort of a general manager or came up into positions of, I guess, leadership, but not necessarily accounting or finance related.
I was in a lot of roles that were leadership roles, a couple of times outside of the accounting world. I also was given the opportunity to be general manager of a waste hauling company at Veolia. I'd been a controller, and they said, hey, there's an opportunity to run a business, and you seem like you've got good aptitude and good relationships, so why don't you give that a try? So have had leadership roles there. And at Charter Steel for 10 years, I was at the director level, so I was leading the finance function, segments of it, as well as partnering with operations, and certainly felt like I was part of that leadership team as well. So not necessarily CFO, but yeah, to your point, as you're rolling through your career, I didn't have CFO on my target list. It was, hey, I really like this company. I really like the role, like the experiences, like the people. I'm making a difference. I'm good.
What about geography? I think you're in Wisconsin. You mentioned the other earlier company. You were in Texas, I think. Did geography ever matter to you?
Certainly do like living in Wisconsin, born and raised here. Spent some time in the Chicago area. The Houston role was one that popped up. It was a great opportunity to take a couple steps up in the organization. So, and I had some family down there. But in the end, climate in Houston and the culture in Houston is quite a bit different. So it wasn't specific to say, hey, I want to stay here. The opportunities seemed to present themselves, and we enjoyed it here, so it was never one of those things where you're like, hey, it's time to find another part of the country to go to pursue an opportunity.
Did you enjoy these mid-sized companies, I would describe them as? Is there something about them? And I would think as a finance director or a senior accountant, you're sitting right across the table from the CEO very often discussing challenges. Am I right about that? Or is that appealing to you, or is that one of the reasons why you found it satisfying?
Yeah, I mean, the small to mid-sized company, you're involved in a lot of things outside of finance, so you're able to add value, to the business in other ways. Charter, that's $1 billion company, so I mean that was a large organization, but again, it was family owned, so it felt like a smaller company while working there.
Can you tell us how were you recruited there? Or did that involve a recruiter, or is that just part of your network that brought you there?
Yeah, that was really one of the first times where my network really came into play. Knew a guy who knew the CFO, knew a guy who knew someone in operations, and it was able to make that connection to get that foot in the door.
John, we're intrigued by a number of the companies on your bio, just because they're not necessarily on our radar. Many of them are privately held companies. Can you tell us something about Charter Steel? I saw it's classified under mining on some lists, but what would what is that about? What are they doing?
Yeah, Charter Steel is the largest privately held steel company in the country. So a mill up in Saukville, Wisconsin, and a mill down in Cleveland, Ohio. Fourth generation now running the business. Fantastic culture, just really nice company, profitable, growing, They acquire based on fit and culture. Really loved the culture there.
Tell us about it, because we all throw around that word and we think what it means is, okay, it's the people and how they behave within the organization. What was unique about Charter in that respect?
You know, it is one of those things that's a takeaway for me in my career too. It's culture just doesn't happen, right? You got to be planful about it, and the ownership of the business very planful. Employee engagement priority, reinvesting in the business is a priority. They allowed employees to pursue continuous improvement opportunities. So if you're on the shop floor and you have an idea, you're given the space and the tools to pursue it. And then the company reinvests all those benefits. So it's this kind of a virtuous circle. They reinvest in the company, employees benefit, more engaged, you make more improvements, the company makes more money, they reinvest in the company. So it is one of those things that you've got to keep it in the forefront of your mind as you're moving on to other organizations or building a function. You got to really think about what's the culture that I want, what's the behavior that I want to model every day, and reinforce to make sure that you can maintain that, because you can't backslide.
10 years at Charter, that's quite an investment. Today, you don't always see that. Executives are more impatient very often. Is that a reflection of you feeling as if they were investing in you? They were, and again, I think you're going to say, well, it's a reflection of the culture.
A little bit. The other piece of it is you feel like you're contributing and you're helping moving the business forward.
Yeah.
Potentially, you get comfortable there, but you're well taken care of. Again, you like the people, you like the culture. It's one of those places too where they have a CFO there, Todd Endress. He's been there for quite a while. Great guy to work for. He wasn't going anywhere. So okay, that's not an option for me here. So if I wanted to be a CFO, I would have had to make that choice. It took a while to get there, but at some point in time, you're like, okay, time for something fresh.
And I'll just point out to the listener, I don't want to talk about Sellars just yet, but you leave Charter, step into a VP of finance role at Sellars, it looks like, and within 2 years, you're stepping into the CFO office. I mean, you could have done this sooner. And just for other career builders out there, meaning, couldn't you? Or how do you look at the world? Meaning you could have gotten to the CFO office sooner had you wanted to, I think. Certainly,
right? You could have found the right opportunity. I mean, Sellars is about, we'll say, 1/10 of the size of Charter, so, a smaller business. And there are tons of those out there, where someone with my skill sets could step in as VP of Finance or CFO pretty quickly. All right, so I want you to take a look back in time for us to your early days, your first 10 years after school. Again, you looks like you have a degree in accounting. Accounting was always top of mind for you. What's the piece of advice? If you could go back in time now and give yourself that piece of advice, is there something you'd tell that person? Yeah, one of the things that took me a while to learn, and it's just probably part of who I am, is you don't have to do it all by yourself. You've got a team of people. They've got talents and skills that you don't have. Let others help you. Give people the tool sets to help get things done. Early in your career, you are the doer, right? And sometimes it takes a while to get out of that mindset. It's like something comes up, you're like, all right, I got to take care of this. Let's go, let's do it. You get to a point, you're like, hey, wait a minute, I've got a group of talented people here. Give them the direction, the tools, the training, the guidance, and say, all right, go take care of it. So that took a while for me to pick up on. Looking back, would you had wanted to be in a Fortune 500 enterprise at any time? Or again, what you forfeit there is you're further away from the business, and you've already revealed to us you kind of like that. You could see how you were making an impact. Yeah, that's a tough one. Again, I think you're too disconnected, depending on the role, but I think you're too disconnected from the business and making those partnerships where you feel like, okay, again, not just in finance, but whether it's in the sales side, the operations side, where you can help them make business decisions that move the needle. So, while you're at Charter, perhaps, and maybe it happened earlier, do you recall
ever being tapped on the shoulder by the CFO and I need you in this meeting tomorrow. I want you to talk about this. Did you have to ever been tapped on the shoulder to present to, I don't know, the management team, board members?
I'm going to say, I'm going to give you kind of a parallel to that. There was a point in time at Veolia where I was picked to kind of go into a location that was struggling. They would have a leader that potentially left abruptly. Typically it was, it could have been a medical thing, or it could have just been, hey, something wasn't working out. The leader of that organization is gone. And the first time it happened, it was a medical thing. A regional VP said, hey, would you mind going up to Minocqua, Wisconsin? So it's a town far northern Wisconsin. Guy that's running the business there had a medical emergency, and he's going to be out for 6 months. Need someone to go up there and lead that location. Okay, pack the car, go up there, meet the people, assess the situation. That was a bit of a shift from my life prior to that. You have to kind of get there, instill confidence in the team that, hey, you can do the job. Get them to buy into whatever it is you're selling. Usually they're glad to see, if in that situation it was medical, but oftentimes when there's a leader that's left, they're glad to see somebody that's positive and ready to help them versus maybe what had been there in the past. So not exactly what you had asked, but a similar situation.
And again, Viola, is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, it's Veolia. It's actually a global French-owned company. They're huge around the world. In this, North America, they've got a little smaller footprint, but.
And what do they make?
Well, around the world, they're a leader in water. So supplying water treatment and what have you here. In the U.S., It was solid waste and recycling, landfill operations, environmental services, hazardous waste type stuff.
From Veolia to Charter Steel to Sellars. So, and as we make that segue in, again, I already mentioned how you arrived at Sellars, and in short order, it looks like you were entering the CFO office. Let's now find out about this company you joined back in 2022, Sellars. Tell us about it. What type of company is it? What are its offerings?
So if you've ever done any home improvement painting projects or worked on your car, motorcycle, boat, there's a chance you've purchased some of our products. If you go to any Home Depot or Lowe's around the country, you'll see them. Any like O'Reilly or Napa or even Walmart. We sell white rags in a box, blue shop towels, kind of heavy duty wiping and cleaning supplies. We've got this proprietary technology. Take a paper, kind of a base paper. Imagine a giant roll of paper that's 8 feet long and 12 feet around. Run it through our proprietary process and create this absorbent, strong product that you can use to clean up, whatever it is you have to clean up. We've got a patent on using recycled paper. So we're the only company in the world that has both a patent on this technology and use of recycled paper. So we've got this nice cost advantage. Kimberly-Clark's the only other company that has this technology. We've got this recycled aspect of it, which gives us a cost advantage against them. So we can use curbside cardboard as part of our raw material input versus virgin paper. So it's quite a savings for us. And then the other kind of main product that we brought to market is a new kitchen towel, Bravo. It's available in about 300 Target stores nationwide. It's made of 90% recycled material. I've got some back here. Can't quite see it. There it is.
Bravo.
Yep. So you can get it at Target.com. But yeah, we've just launched this product. It performs like the big names like Bounty and Viva, but it's recycled, and it's kind of interesting business to be in. We sell things that are designed to be thrown away, basically. So to add the recycled aspect of it at least makes consumers feel a little bit better. It's like, all right, this was 90% recycled. It was thrown away once. I'm reusing it.
When you arrive, what's the intent of having this senior finance person step in now? What is there? we have to do a better job allocating our resources here. We're investing too much over here, too little over there. What was it?
Yeah, it was. I'm gonna just be honest. It was a lot of basic blocking and tackling, systems non-functioning, financial reporting done in Excel. There was literally I'm not exaggerating, there was a spreadsheet that had 700 tabs behind the scenes for their financial reporting package. When it worked, it was pretty slick. Just the minor issue was it never worked. And everybody knows the pitfalls of using Excel. It's a great tool, but a lot of human input and a lot of error. It's very, very error prone. So it was a matter of, hey, we need to develop new financial reporting. We need to get the right team in place. Back to the comment about culture and fit. I'm not, square pegs and round holes. It was just not a good fit. So kind of had to recreate the team, do a lot of the basics. Get back to how about we get the month end closed in 4 or 5 days instead of 15 or 20 days. So just the simple things.
Part of what your mandate then is change. You have to change the mindset. Where do you begin with that? It begins with talent, I think, in your case. I don't know if you made hires or was there a new piece of technology maybe that came in? I mean, how do you change that mindset?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Partnered with the IT team, shifted our financial reporting into Power BI. So working closely with them and with the finance team was kind of an educational process for everybody. The IT team probably knows more about financial statements now than they ever wanted to. But that's been a great benefit because they still come back to me and say, hey, John, I have an idea for a better version of this report. So that worked out fantastically. And yeah, it was getting the people in place that were curious. And people that wanted to improve versus, nope, this is how we do this. We've all worked with people like that. This is how we do this, and that to me, that's not acceptable. There's usually a better way.
I suspect the company wasn't the most sophisticated with managing its data prior to your arrival. This new technology is a step in the right direction, but you're still playing catch up, I would think.
Yeah, we have come a long way in 2 years. What used to take, somebody would ask a question or you would want to investigate a variance and you'd have to go to a file cabinet and find some paper and then talk to somebody. Now, in seconds you can pull up data, do some analytics. Usually you're answering the questions before they're asked now because we've got such good data. So it's been a huge game changer for us. Finance is now becoming that strategic partner where we're reaching out to the business to say, hey, I've noticed, this business segment or this customer or this SKU is driving down the margins, or we've got a cost issue here. Let's get together and talk about it.
Is there is there a way you've begun to reveal more information to the organization, whether it's a dashboard or just beginning to talk about a certain metric that perhaps wasn't always getting the attention it needed to? Sort of like what you just suggested, where certain SKUs were struggling or getting margin erosion for one reason or another.
Sure. Yeah, we've got some operational reports that didn't exist before on operating efficiency. Maybe the supervisors would track them and post them in the shop, but now they're on a dashboard for management to see. So kind of getting that real-time pulse on, hey, how are things going out on the shop floor? On the sales side, one that I'd asked to be developed was around incoming orders. We would get an email blast every day with, hey, here's all the new orders that came in, but it was kind of a static, day-to-day snapshot, and you don't know how to feel about it. Is that a good day? Is it a bad day? Is that a good mix? Is it a bad mix? Now we've got a nice dashboard that shows you incoming order trends, and you can filter and pick the time frame and pick a customer and pick a segment and get a feel for, hey, which way are things going? Do I need to take action? So that's one that I've been using a lot recently.
So, you mentioned that the collaboration, it seems to me, you've really had to invest some time with the IT folks and get on the same page and understand together what the shared goals would be. But there are other parts of the organization as well. And I'm curious, something like visiting a customer. I mean, as a strategic finance leader, you're demonstrating to the organization that here's what finance should be doing. Watch where I go.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on the supply chain side, specifically on the procurement side. We do have some toll manufacturing that gets done for us. So I've got a couple of really talented cost accounting folks that have partnered with procurement and the operations team on making sure that everybody understands the incoming costs, the freight costs, painting a picture for them as to, when you don't make it inside, you make it outside. Here's the impact on margin. Let's figure out how to flip the switch and bring it back in, or find another vendor. Paper is our biggest raw material, and so I have spent time on helping to develop paper sources and doing cost analysis on, is it this grade versus, grade X versus grade Y? Which the one we should be using to get this basis weight out in the final product? So yeah, a ton of time there. Not as much on the customer side yet.
For those of us not familiar with the paper industry these days, I mean, is it come down to, okay, we've got 3 different suppliers, some we count on for this, others for this, but it's not working. We need to do it a little differently. Can you give us a sense of what some of the decisions that need to be made related to the supply chain in your paper suppliers might be?
Yeah, so I mean, Wisconsin, grew up as a paper hotspot, still is, and every paper mill has a different size machine. So sometimes that's the driving force. Does the width of the paper coming off of their mill make sense for the width and the size of our equipment here? Can they make paper that has recycled fiber as part of their process? A lot of people can't. So that's another winnowing factor. And then capacity, paper being a commodity, those businesses up and down, you need to lock in a long-term supply agreement with the paper company to make sure that you've got supply. Because without it, you can't do anything. I can't go down the street to somebody else because I will have taken a lot of time to develop my proprietary paper grades with that supplier. So a pretty fixed relationship, really important relationship.
What about the relationships along the front lines? You mentioned some of the customers who buy, where we can find those products today. Some very sizable companies can demand a lot from the products that they display often. I mean, can you tell us about those relationships? Is that an area where finance can help too?
Certainly. The large retailers, doing business with them, it can sometimes be difficult. And it sometimes seems like you're the enemy, and they're trying to figure out ways to squeeze another few cents out of you by dinging you for everything under the sun. So you really have to stay on top of, your day-to-day transactions, making sure that when the customer's paying, if they're taking a deduction, what was it for, chasing it down. So we've used our Power BI to help us keep track of what's going on with these retailers and take action quicker, and also display trends to the business. So if you're quoting new business, for example, for a Lowe's, you look back and say, hey, yeah, our margin was good on that product, but look at all the deductions that they took over time for late shipments or paperwork that was sideways. You got to include that in your cost structure when you're quoting new work. So,
for those of us who watch Shark Tank, one would think that just scoring one of these relationships, you're done. You've got, you're going to make the money. I'm just curious as to, and I don't know if you watch Shark Tank, but if you do, what's some of the, what makes you yell at the television? What are we naive about? Those relationships are so much more complex in certain ways. And I think even for you arriving there, you've probably learned a few surprise details about how it's done.
Yeah, it was a bit mind-boggling. You would have thought it would have all been completely automated because these are pretty sophisticated companies. We spend a fair amount of time manually logging into their portals and putting the information in the format that they require. And they're all different. Menards is different from Lowe's, is different from Home Depot, is different from Napa. Not very
sounds time consuming.
Yeah, not scalable either. Every time you add a new significant customer, I can't really leverage a system or a process. I need a human to intervene. So we're working on some of that. We're actually jumping into robotic process automation, RPA. Had some experience with that at Charter, and I think we've got opportunities to help us streamline some of those activities with that tool set.
And is that are those technology applications that facilitate RPA? Then is that?
Yeah, essentially, it's just automating. It's like a macro on steroids, basically. So just automating a small process here that normally would be manual with that tool. Not super complicated, but you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Now, do you have a dedicated FP&A professional, or are you the dedicated FP&A professional?
That's an accurate statement. Yeah. I do a lot of the FP&A. I recently hired a corporate controller. Does a lot of treasury management. She manages the transactional folks, but she's also starting to help out with the FP&A piece. But yeah, we had to rebuild that as well.
When it comes to resource allocation, is there something you tweaked, something you modified? You needed more resources in one function and less in another? Anything?
Yeah, we had, there were 4 folks in the transactional group, so AR and AP when I started. We're down to 2 now because we've looked at their processes and said, hey, there's a lot of paper, a lot of manual here. We implemented this last year, an AP automation solution. Stamply is the product. Just again, this is technology that's been out there for 20 years. Sellers didn't have it. So there are a lot of simple things like that we've been able to do to automate some of the work.
Some easy wins, sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, and we always like to ask about AI. I mean, are there some wild conversations taking place within the company as people began to use generative AI in some experimental fashion and discussing possibilities as to, what the future might hold in terms of some of what we're hearing or reading about?
Yeah, it's like a lot of companies, it's early days for us. And based on, the prior discussion that we've been having, you get a sense of where we are from a data perspective. We have a ways to go before we can really leverage it. We are using it in conjunction with some of the tools. We use Zendesk in our customer service area, so that it's got some AI features. Stamply, the AP automation has some AI built into that as well. Microsoft Copilot using that a bit. Also, ChatGPT. The IT team they're the ones playing with it the most.
Yeah.
So we've got a roadmap in development. I've identified some potential use cases already, but we've got some data to get in order, right? Got to get our house a bit in order before we can jump in.
Well, great overview for us. Appreciate it. We're going to jump to what we refer to as our finance strategic moment. And this may have happened any time during the course of your career. It might have happened last week, might have happened 20 years ago. Don't know, but what comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I'm going to just go back in time to Charter Steel as the director of finance. We had an Excel model that was built at some point in time, maintained by a couple of folks on my team, and this was the commercial margin model. And you'd get a question from the commercial side of the business, or you'd be running some financial statements. You'd want to know some more details. This model would run overnight on a desktop server. That's how complex it was. It was just built in Excel. But, because it was Excel, because it was complicated, I don't think people really understood the logic, and it would, output once in a while was a little bit questionable. You'd have sales guys are like, okay, that doesn't seem quite right. And they'd have to go off, half informed. So recognize that as a gap. Had been doing some research on activity-based costing. So took it, said, hey, let's put together a pilot on activity-based costing. Pick one aspect of our business. There were several segments to the manufacturing process. Picked one. Built a model in Excel to start with. Partnered with the business, partnered with the commercials team, the operations team, supply chain. So let's put this thing together, teach them about activity-based costing, kind of prove out the use case. Once we had done that, kind of everybody was nodding their head like, hey, I think this is something that would work for us. So took that next step, did an RFP, looked for a software tool, not Excel. Discovered there's a company called 3C Software. They've got a tool, Impact ECS. Just, these guys understand manufacturing. It was pretty clear. So partnered with them, went through, I'm going to say, a 8-month project and implementation. And it was great because you're allowing the commercial team, sales guys, product managers, operations team to give input into how the model is built, which I find is kind of key. And this is, again, one of those strategic moments. You're like, okay, let's get everybody involved. Kind of one of those, we work better when we work together. Get them involved. You get that buy-in. So then when it comes time to get the output, they're not looking at it like, oh, that's finance's information. That's not mine. This time it's theirs. It's ours. Right. So this thing was fantastic. We were able to model scenarios for them. Hey, what happens when the cost of this input changes? What happens when your customer mix changes? What does that do to the profitability of the customer? So when they went to have discussions about price increases with the customer, they could be very transparent, pinpoint, hey, you know what, we're fine here. These couple of grades, we're a little bit off on price. If we could do this, it was a great experience. And again, I think the output was, wow, this really took us up about 5 steps. Nobody's manually entering data into an Excel model. It was really automated, and it was a tool that helped move the business forward. So that was my strategic moment. And I'm doing that here at Sellars as well, where how can we take this data, partner with the business, turn it into something that can help improve profitability and move the business forward.
CFOs and controllers, does expense management feel like a necessary evil? It's time to switch to Brex. Brex automates and accelerates spend management with easy-to-use corporate cards, travel, expense management, and bill pay, all on one AI-powered platform. Brex makes it easy to boost efficiency and compliance enterprise-wide and free up your managers, employees, and accounting team for higher impact work. Top companies from startups to enterprises are using Brex to automate manual work and transform their finance operations. We're talking DoorDash, Robinhood, Airtable, and countless other industry leaders. Ready to join them? Switch to AI-powered spend management at Brex.com. We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where we ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. Now, this wasn't too long ago. We want you to think back to when you stepped into the CFO office. And we want you to think back to, all that time you'd worked for CFOs. You had a pretty good idea as to how they operated, what were their priorities. At the same time, there must have been something you wish someone had told you before you stepped into the office, something you didn't expect, something. We're now going to give you a pass so you can go back in time and tell yourself this, whisper it in your ear. I don't know. What would that piece of advice be?
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier, just relative to, understanding as a leader, you don't have to do it all. Leveraging your team, leveraging other functions to help get things done. So that really was one of the things that I wish I would have grasped a little earlier on in my career. And I think the other thing that I've kind of discovered in this organization is a pretty good communicator. Get along well with other folks, but probably communicating more than you think you should. Just making sure that everybody is fully informed, because the one time they're not, somebody's going to let you know that they should have known that, or they should, you should have informed them. So yeah, just over communicate. It doesn't hurt.
And I want to just circle back with you on that, the power of teams. I don't know if it's what the realization you experienced was. The desire to have greater agency, to work with others, the ability to collaborate and have others, lessen the load as you don't have to do it all yourself. How do I begin collaborating with others and having them advance with me? I mean, is it as simple as that?
Yeah. It's it's amazing the first time you see it, when you empower somebody and they've got the desire and the skills, and then you watch them do their thing. You're like, okay, this is some pretty powerful stuff. And especially folks maybe earlier in their career, they've got, their career path, unlike me, maybe they say, I got to be a CFO when I'm 35. They've got a desire, they've got the aptitude. You give them the runway and the tools. Again, it's fun to watch. You do have to put guardrails in place, make sure they don't go off the reservation. But yeah, it's, empower them, support them, make sure that they understand that they can go ahead and make decisions. And they're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. That's how everybody learns, right? So,
John, we'd like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. We're wondering if there's something maybe most people don't know about you, something, an interest you pursue, something you accomplished in the past. Don't know.
Pretty open. So all the people that I know probably know everything.
Are you still a swimmer?
I've shifted to cycling, so pretty active cyclist. I actually race competitively, so.
I say that because I want to just mention I see a swimming team captain in college or what have you.
Yeah, that was, I got great experience. The whole teamwork thing started at a young age. But yeah, I've shifted to competitive cycling. I like the discipline of the training, and I like to race, which it's a lot of fun. Maybe the one thing that people might not know is, I actually Marie Kondoed my dresser at home. The Spark Joy lady that shows you how to fold all your clothes and be very efficient and organized. Life-changing.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's just one of those little things. I'm like, I'm going to try this. I had an old dresser that didn't quite fit everything, and after you follow her process, you're like, hey, this actually works. It's easy to keep it organized too. So
yeah.
Closet, not the same way, but so that's a little.
That's a good point for a finance listening audience who tend to be a little disciplined and organized. So thank you for that. Wondering if you have a book selection for us. It might just be a resource, a podcast recommendation. Don't know. It might be a book you escape with. Could be anything.
Yeah, so an actual book. One of the books that really resonated with me, I probably read it 15 years ago, The Art of Possibility by Ben and Rosamund Zander. One of the concepts in there is kind of that leading from any chair, so the story about the conductor and, the musicians, and you can essentially lead from any position in the organization, whether you have leadership authority or not. It's just how you approach interacting with others and how you approach your job. And there's another big aspect in that book. It was about enlivening possibility, and by making other people powerful. So it goes back to the comment I made before: give people the support and the tools, and give them the power, and you expand the power of the organization that way. So
yeah. Interesting. No, we haven't had it recently, so thank you for that. Great. Always good to get a new and fresh selection. We're up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we'd like to know what your priorities are as CFO of Sellars. What would that be?
Yeah, we've got so one of the biggest priorities is probably on the IT and system side. I have the IT organization under me as well. And we're really kind of shifting the way that we interact with our customers, from a website and a customer portal and what have you. So that's going to be a big focus in this next year. We think it can drive a lot of value for the organization, help grow the business. That's one. And then the second one is just to continue to automate and leverage data. We're still not done with our journey, so that's still high on my list.
John Lutz, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack.
Hello, listeners. As you may know, we recently passed the 1,000 episode milestone, and the fact is, we've published well over 1,000 episodes over the years, but we only prescribe a number to episodes featuring CFOs because we know this is truly what has distinguished us over time. We're a platform dedicated to the people who actually occupy the CFO office, and to you, our listeners, who are very often seeking to better understand the roots of finance leadership. Well, it's with this in mind that we're pleased to announce the release of our new book titled The CFO 500, where we have profiled 500 of the more than 1,000 CFOs that have participated with us over the years. And you remember Siskel and Ebert, the movie guide? Leonard Moulton had his movie guide as well. Well, that's sort of the concept of what's inspired this volume, the CFO 500. Think of it as a reference volume where you can quickly thumb through the 500 one-page CFO profiles and cherry pick out the interviews that matter to you. How so? Well, each CFO page profile includes an individual QR code that allows you to instantly access the audio interview with the CFO that most intrigues you. Or maybe it's a particular industry. Just like that movie guide you used to reach to on a day when nothing much was going on, here's a way to quickly reference the interviews that matter most to you. The CFO 500 is now available for $29.95 and can only be purchased via CFOThoughtLeader.com. So visit us at CFOThoughtLeader.com. Thank you.